All right, get ready for more warrantless spying. The House dropped the ball when they passed a bill reauthorizing Section 702 of FISA, which is supposed to target bad guys overseas, but allows for incidental and possibly widespread data collection on Americans. So what is warrantless data collection? That is spying. The Fourth Amendment is supposed to protect American citizens from government overreach and unlawful search and seizure. But the reauthorization of this law lets the FBI and many other law enforcement agencies use those emails and phone calls and other investigations without warrants, as they see fit. The beautiful thing is the encroachment on civil liberties makes best friends out of strange bedfellows, as the defense of liberty knows no party. The problem is both parties have blown it. Nancy Pelosi paved the way for House sheep to vote for Devin Nunes's carbunkled stepchild, and there weren't enough brave Republican freedom fighters to defeat the status quo. There are good people in both parties who are healthy skeptics of bloated federal surveillance power. But what good is skepticism when it's neutered by apathy? The Senate cannot lay down and get chewed up by Mitch McConnell's procedural lawnmower, because this is bigger than division or resistance or persistence or party. This speaks to our essential liberties and fundamental freedoms and the ability to check the power of government before it erodes our rights and destroys the republic. Glad you're here. Let's start it all. I'm Kennedy. The Senate vote on FISA is expected sometime later this week. So why will so many lawmakers be voting to further destroy our freedom and right to privacy? Joining me now, very first time to the show, Oregon Senator Ron Wyden. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you, Kennedy. Let's make sure we do it again, too.
I certainly hope that there is a way of reversing the House's horrible decision on this garbage legislation. In your ideal world, I know that you and Senator Rand Paul have authored almost identical a Senate version of what Justin Amash had proposed in his amendment. In your ideal scenario, what would the Senate pass?
Kennedy, what our bipartisan coalition wants to do is make sure there's no end run on the Constitution. We don't take a backseat to anybody in terms of going after terrorists overseas. But what has happened now that communication systems around the globe have become interconnected, more and more law-abiding Americans are getting swept up in those searches. So, for example, you could have a business person here in the United States talking to a foreigner, and they might have their emails swept up in that collection. What we want to do is say that unless there's an emergency, that business person's data can only be searched if you get a warrant.
Yeah, and now with this legislation that will unfortunately probably also pass the Senate, that about collection returns. And that was the one where the FISA court swatted down the NSA for targeting people who weren't sending or receiving emails, but whether there was something about someone who was a target. And that is incredibly problematic, because if you write something about someone, if you mention someone's name who might be a person of interest to the NSA or CIA or FBI, now all of a sudden your emails get swept up in that. And, it's very difficult for me to believe people like Devin Nunes, who says that there were important reforms put in place, when this actually seems worse than the initial law that it's reauthorizing.
Our bipartisan coalition wants to make sure that the prohibition on abouts collection stays in place. You've stated it pretty well. Abouts collection means that there's barely a mention of somebody, and I had been making the case against abouts collection for years and years. Finally, even the government saw that they had gone too far, moved administratively to get rid of it, and now there's talk about bringing it back. So what our bipartisan group wants to do is bar that. In a lot of ways, we have actually gone backward here in the last couple of years. For example, when I asked Dan Coats, the head of national intelligence, about purely domestic collection, purely domestic collection on this law, we couldn't get a straight answer about that either.
That's got to be really frustrating, because I will never forget, it fills me with rage when I think about James Clapper sitting in front of you in that Senate committee grilling, and you asked him is the NSA spying on Americans. And he lied. It was a bald-faced lie. This is why so many people are skeptical of the way this information is obtained and who's using it and how many people are caught up in this net. And I don't understand how you hold people like Dan Coates and like James Clapper accountable when there is so much opacity. We don't have any real numbers and real answers, and they sound like used car salesmen when they say, trust me.
Kennedy, it is a dangerous world. I've been on the Intelligence Committee a while. There is no dispute about that. The difference of opinion is those who basically are the status quo caucus, they exploit that and say, oh my goodness, it's a dangerous world, just give us these powers. What we have said is, look, security and liberty are not mutually exclusive. The American people deserve smart policies that get them both, and that's what we believe we're offering in our bipartisan bill.
All right. Well, Senator, I want to ask you about the potential government shutdown that's coming up this Friday at midnight. Now, earlier today, President Trump tweeted, quote, the Democrats want to shut down the government over amnesty for all and border security. The biggest loser will be our rapidly, I guess, deteriorating military, rebuilding military. OK. At a time we need it more than ever. We need a merit-based system of immigration, and we need it now. No more dangerous lottery. Now, it's obviously a little bit more nuanced than that. And the president's supposedly vulgar comments last week have made potentially difficult negotiations even more nefarious, I guess. Are we heading toward a government shutdown?
I hope not. And of course, the Republicans are in charge of all the branches of government, so they are in the driver's seat. Senator Hatch and I, for example, on the Finance Committee, we've had a bipartisan agreement on the Children's Health Plan, one of the key issues in place, very important for my state, 80,000 youngsters. There's been a lot of progress on a bipartisan effort for the DACA young people, the Dreamers. Unfortunately, there was a big setback last week on that, instigated by the president. So my hope is that the government will not shut down, and certainly what Democrats have shown on key issues like DACA, children's health, other kinds of priorities, we want to keep the government open, find common ground.
All right, so if Lindsey Graham and the president came to you and said, listen, let's end chain migration, let's end the lottery system, and let's do something to at least beef up part of the wall. It doesn't have to be a 2,000-mile long wall. Let's do that and take care of the Dreamers. Would you go for that deal?
Kennedy, never negotiate on television, but
that's all I ever do.
I think these Dreamers have done nothing wrong. They've done everything right. I meet with them at home. They have great grades. They work 2 jobs.
No one disputes that. No one from either party disputes that. And you hear the president and Lindsey Graham and, you know, Paul Ryan and Republicans are falling all over themselves to say the exact same thing. That's not the issue.
The president has been all over the map on these immigration issues. Democrats have consistently said, we support security. We don't think it makes sense to spend $18 billion on a wall.
Yeah,
My goodness,
I agree with you there.
We need some help for our roads and bridges and transportation systems, but we've always been for security. So this is doable. Lindsey Graham and Dick Durbin, big group of Democrats have been working on this. I think that ought to be the foundation of going forward.
All right, very good. And I want to thank you. You were so nice to me when I was in high school. I met you when you were a congressman at the Children's Charity Fund dinner. I was volunteering as a mime, but I broke my silence to talk to you, and you were very kind then. I've seen you several times throughout the years, and I want to thank you for coming on the show.
We won't make this a bouquet tossing contest, but I look forward to being back on the show.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Thank you.
Very good. All right.